Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Scouting Report. And honestly, guys, by now you should have known who we are going to talk about. It's about Lucas Paqueta. I started looking upon him in the internet to find some compilations and all those sort of things, like every Arsenal fan does. But then, more than his compilation videos, I was really impressed by his dancing moves and skills, so much so that I've actually put a separate compilation video just on his dancing skills. Seriously. On that note, I would like to introduce both our panel members today. Mitch, who's an Arsenal fan and as well a writer for Pain in the Arsenal. Hey, Mitch, how are you going?
Hi, good. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, great. Pleasure is ours. And we've got our guest today who's going to talk about the special man on the Scout, is Jeremy. Jeremy is a podcaster and he as well writes for Breaking the Lines. Jeremy, I know you've got more stuff on your Twitter profile. So do you want to give more intro in terms of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on, Bob. I mean, the main thing that I do is my French football podcast that I'm lucky enough to work with Chloe and to produce it under the Breaking the Lines flag. But then being French, living in Australia, and being a fan of all things football, I write about Australian football in French. I write about French football in English for Australian media. I'm lucky enough that I'm able to be a football commentator here in Canberra. So I commentate on women's football, and then with the latest, I'd say, innovations in technology, I touch into all those NFT game that are linked with football. We're using the knowledge that I have about French football usually helps with all of that. So yeah, I have a few videos on my YouTube channel where I talk about French football only, and some of them where I talk about French football in the context of NFTs and things like that. But mainly French football is what I do.
I think that's too much to fit in a recording, I would say.
Okay.
You've got a lot of stuff on your sleeve. So Jeremy, I know we pulled you in to talk about a player that we have been linked with recently. I mean, it's a no surprise, because he's Brazilian. So he's bound to be linked to Arsenal these days because of our Brazilian links and all those sort of things. But then Paqueta. So, I mean, do you mind giving our viewers, in terms of who he is and then how did he actually come about in Lyon? What's his journey so far?
Yeah, of course. So he's I guess a playmaker as pure as he gets as far as playmakers, and everybody heard of him when he signed for Milan when he was a little bit younger. After a couple of pretty excellent years in Flamengo, he was very much a prospect when he arrives in Milan, and I guess fortunately or unfortunately, depending on which side of the Alps you are, it was probably a bit too early for him to go for such a big club. And I don't know if he burned his wings, but at least he didn't reach the expectations. Keep in mind, he was at a time where Milan wasn't the Milan that it is now, which is definitely right now it's a bit more structured and they're working the right way. At the time, it was more results driven and not necessarily room to actually grow young players like they're doing so well the last couple of seasons. So not easy for him to go to Milan, and then very surprisingly, to be honest with you, for us in France, and I'm sure for Lyon fans as well, Lyon was linked, and they very quickly made the deal happen, cost them 20 million euros, and they've haven't regretted it since. He really brought class, skills. His grinta, because he's a very intense player who likes to play aggressively, who's very good ball to feet, but also off the ball, a natural leader, both in skills and in mentality. And he brought all that. And there was a bit of, he came with his pedigree, and a Brazilian who failed in Milan going to France when he first signed. Everybody in France was like, oh, he's just going to be another, like Shaqiri last year, or those big names that come to France thinking it's going to be easy and that they don't do anything. But actually, he came in with a lot of humility and with a real eagerness to really launch his career back where it was supposed to be. And so he's been like shining ever since in Liga, and he's been impressive. He's been probably at his best when he plays against the best teams. Every single game he plays against Paris Saint-Germain is at a top level. But he's just been very consistent. The first year is with Memphis Depay. So there's a little bit of shadow over him. But the second year he was by himself, and he carried Lyon at times. Then, and we'll get to talk about that a little bit. There was some changes, and then there was a bit of lack of consistency after the changes happened at Lyon. But basically a very skilled midfielder on and off the ball, a proper leader, very humble guy, very nice guy, like one of the nicest reputations for a footballer that you'll find in France. Super approachable. There was a rumor of him not even really caring that much about football because he was such a nice guy. So a good overall in the locker room, a guy that you want to have.
Yeah. So you mentioned about all the things that he can do. So if we were to just talk about in terms of his positional play, what's he? Is he a number 8, or is he more a winger sort of a guy? So or a playmaker. So how would he actually put his best role as?
I'd say as a playmaker, either in a formation where you have like a 4-3-2-1, where he ends up being one of the 2 number 10s and he can play into the half spaces, or into a 4-2-3-1 when there's 1 number 10 and he enjoys freedom. He enjoys being available. He enjoys dropping down to go get the ball and bring the ball up. If you look at his stats as far as progression, I think he's second or third 2 years in a row in progression, carrying the ball. He really is great at breaking the lines, and no pun intended, whenever he's got the ball in his feet as well. So I don't think he himself like to be close into a position, because wherever you put him on the field, he's going to find himself available. Where his position matter is where the work that he can do defensively. But with Lyon, when he played onto the left wing, it felt like it was kind of like not used to his best ability. But whenever he had the ball, he was able to free space for everybody else around the pitch, Same when he was playing on the right. I think when you play as a proper number 10, whether it's by himself or with 2 number 10s, that's where he's the most valuable, because he's got an awesome football IQ. He really understands where the football is. He really can feel the football, understand where the game goes. Has that Messi-like looking everywhere around before the ball comes to you, so he knows what to expect. So you want to have him where there's the most ball. Between 8 and 10, I'm not sure. He's got the ability to be a great number 8, but I feel like he's got so much intensity in the way he defends that if you put him at number 8, he might end up being too low. Whether if you put in a number 10 with enough support behind him, then you can use his defensive skills to press high and to recover the ball early, and then to be very dangerous into the final third ahead. So I think, that number 10 by himself or with another attacking offensive midfielder is where he suits best.
Okay, awesome.
That's really interesting. That's good to know. So what has kind of been it's been kind of interesting, like vaguely following Lyon, to see like all of these midfielders kind of cycling through. Like Bruno just left in January, who we were heavily linked with for a long time. It looks like Houssam Aouar might leave this summer to Real Betis, which I'm also curious about asking you about later, because that's a very interesting saga. So what has kind of like opened up the door for his potential exit from Lyon?
I think there's a few things. The main thing, clearly, Lyon needs money. They need money, and Paqueta is a 50 million, potentially 60 million that can come in, and so that'll help if they get the money from him. They're also, unfortunately for Paqueta, they're also off a bad season, Lyon. You were saying, Bob, that you were a fan of Lyon back 15, 20 years ago. They used to win everything, and then they fought for third place, second place. Last year they finished fourth, but they get more points than the champions for like 3 years before that. So there was a very competitive season, and unfortunately for them, at the very end, they couldn't make it through. So they expected to finish much higher than they are. With Paqueta as their leader this year, it didn't work out. It's 100% not Paqueta's fault, but it didn't work out. So then Lyon decided to go for to try and, I guess, befriend the fans. It's how it's seen, at least in France, to try and reconnect with their fan base. They brought back the old crew. So Lacazette comes back, Tolisso comes back. We're working on, we're Lyon. Our job is to get our kids up, Benzema, Ben Arfa. Everybody knows the stars that went through Lyon, Nabil Fekir, Lacazette, of course. So they're going to work on keeping Kakere, keeping Lukeba, keeping those guys up and bringing back some Lyon DNA, as they call it, to try and make it work that way. Paqueta somehow doesn't fit that much in there anymore. Don't get me wrong. Anybody who's seen the 2 first preseason games from Lyon this year, you want Paqueta in your team. He touches twice the ball, and twice it's a goal, and twice it's just beautiful. So he's a player that can adapt to any system. In my opinion, the only reason why he wants to leave Lyon is because Lyon doesn't give him the love that he probably feels like he deserves, which is when Juninho left, when Bruno Guimaraes left, there was a very strong Brazilian connection that somehow eroded along the way. And there was, I'm not going to say there was any anti-Paqueta feeling, but he wasn't forgiven much. Say, if he didn't have a great game, then Lyon fan would just not boo him, but criticize him regardless, forgetting all the great things that he's done. And I think if he had the support in the club that he used to have when there was Juninho and Guimaraes and Marcelo, because Marcelo left as well, maybe he would have been able to be okay with this. But with his support group gone, and with, like I said, the nice, humble guy that he is, I think maybe he kind of felt like, well, I'm not feeling the love. I don't have my people around me. Whatever I do is never good enough for the fans here. So maybe he said, if you guys want to let me go, I'll go. Like maybe his love for the club slowly but surely was chipped out. And then when they say we need money, he probably was like, hey, I can help if you need that money. So I think it was a progressive thing. Of course, the Juninho leaving probably made him sad more than anything. And Guimaraes as well, because they got along so well. But if he was going to stay for Lyon, I have no doubt that he'll play 100%, that he'll be awesome, that in that team he'll work really well. So I really think at the end, it's a money thing.
So you mentioned about Guimaraes and then how his departure sort of affected. But then I was as well going to ask, on the pitch front, with Bruno leaving to Newcastle, would that help? I mean, did that actually help unlock Paqueta's position in the team? Because they both sort of play in the same roles, I mean, if you were to look at the formations and all those sort of things, was his departure the best thing to happen for Paqueta in the team?
No, I think Paqueta was better with Bruno. I think when you remove Bruno, you remove the link that brings the ball to Paqueta the way Paqueta wants to receive it. Without Paqueta, the midfield became Kakere, he's an awesome player. And then next to Kakere, it was either Ndombele or Thiago. I can't remember his last name now, the guy who was in Lille before, Thiago Mendes, excuse me. And so they ended up having a strong midfield that wasn't very good at keeping the ball and build up play. And that's what Paqueta needs. Paqueta needs midfielders that are able to find him in fit, that are going to look for him in fit, not just people that can defend really well and then not give him the ball. So I think when Bruno Guimaraes left, that link broke, that link between the defense and Paqueta to find him. And whenever Guimaraes had the ball with Paqueta, they knew exactly how to find each other. Clearly, they got along well. So I think the player leaving that freed Paqueta is Depay. When Memphis Depay leaves, Paqueta goes from right winger to number 10, and that's where he shines even more. But when Bruno leaves, you're removing, I guess, the best ally from Paqueta. And instead of freeing him even more, you free him too much because you ask him to do the job of 2 players instead of doing just his job.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Bruno is a very good progressive passer, and if you can't get the ball to your playmakers' feet, they're not going to be able to be as effective. So with that, I know you don't like religiously watch Arsenal or anything, but like on paper, he would kind of fit into our midfield in our 4-4 or our 4-3-3 setup with 6 at the base of midfield. Martin Odegaard has traditionally played in that right 8 role, and on paper, I think a lot of people are projecting that if we were able to strike a deal for Paqueta, he'd fall into that left 8 role. So I think it would kind of stylistically be similar to what you were saying about the 4-3-2-1, where he's playing as a pair of 10s up higher in the half space, because that's kind of how it's been. Our fullbacks have been more tucked in and reserved, and then the 8s are both playing higher in the half spaces. So do you think stylistically that would work very effectively? Our 6 is typically a more progressive passer, so he would get the ball to him, but he's got more of that technical quality than like Xhaka has had when he's played in that higher role, right?
Yeah, and I think that's probably where you use him best. I do think that if there's only one guy behind him, then he's going to track back a lot, and maybe you lose. Like, he's an awesome finisher. You put him into the box, he can score left foot, right foot, he's lethal. If he finds the corner, he's very calm, it's cold-blooded. So you don't want him to trap back too much. But if you play that 4-3-3 with Arsenal, which if you know how Arteta plays, I would expect it to happen like this. That 8 role will work for him. You lose probably a bit of his strength, of his ability in how much work he's going to defensively, because he's a really hard working player. He's not going to stop running. He's not going to stop pressing. Same thing. He's probably one of the 5 best midfielders as far as pressure goes in Ligue 1 for the past couple of seasons, if we look at the stats. So he loves that hard work. So in that 8, he'll be awesome. There's no doubt, and he'll be able to bring his technique and his aggressivity to any midfield. If you had somebody else at 8 and he would play on the wing, then he'll be those wing playmaker. I can't remember what the word is exactly, but who can steal what Payet does at Marseille sometimes, or that kind of thing, who can still bring that magic and that playmaking ability from the wing.
Probably one thing that I wanted to ask for more from an Arsenal perspective, again, is the fact that he is a left-footed player, most likely, isn't it? And we have dearth of talents at Arsenal, especially with the players that we have at the moment, or the players that we've been linked with. How you think that he would be fitting in? I mean, especially the fact that we've got like heavy competition on the left-hand side, and with Fabio Vieira coming in as well. There's more into the mix than what we had last season. So how do you think that he would be able to adapt himself there?
First, he's better on the right-hand side. So when he plays at 2-8 or 2-10s or on the wing, he's going to be naturally drawn to the right-hand side, because he likes to be that Robben style, that Thauvin style, where he goes back onto his left foot to score. Then he's got 2 feet, no issues whatsoever. So he's comfortable with both feet, even though he's a left-footed midfielder. So I think as far as adaptability, he's really that kind of player where I don't worry about him fitting in any team. He's a team guy. He would, he'd listen to the coach. He'll do what the coach asks. So wherever you put him, with Fabio Vieira, I think that's probably 2 profiles that can be similar in certain areas of the pitch. They just get along well. With Odegaard, they'll get along well. He loves people who play football around him, and he loves to be able to do those little 1-2-1 touches. So he'd fit in with anyone. As far as all the left-footed player that you might already have, or at least on the left side, like I said, he's comfortable on each side, and with fitting in, regardless of the system, I think he's a player who's smart enough to go anywhere on the pitch and help. He likes the freedom as well. So hopefully Arteta is happy with what they tend to call liquid football these days. So he's a player that fits in there.
Sorry, Mitch, I was going to ask the important question. Actually, we've been talking about how good he is. Now, the most important thing we have to consider that what's the escape plan? Because we know, for people who don't know or don't follow French football, Jean-Michel Aulas is possibly the Daniel Levy of Ligue 1. It's very I won't go that far as well, because he's really a tough guy to really negotiate and then come up with a deal. How hard is it going to be for Arsenal to broker a deal with Lyon?
He'll have to be like what Aulas asked. He'll have to be 50, whether it's 30 plus 20 or whatever deal they want to do. Aulas will be happy to do a deal like this, but it have to be a deal. The issue, or the unfortunate thing for Arsenal, is Lyon was broke 2 months ago. Now they're not broke anymore, because Sextor came in and put some money in, and so they've changed the ownership. Aulas is now only like 33% owner of the club, but he's still the president. So the money came in. France in Ligue 1, they signed a new deal for all their rights with CVC. So there's money who came in as well. So they are not begging for money anymore, but they'll be comfortable if they got more money coming in. So they want to strike a deal. They won't beg for a deal. So it'll have to be the 50 that are announced everywhere. This is what they want.
Will there be any good credits for the fact that I'm not sure if in case you read about this, but then I came across this article where Paqueta basically took a pay cut when he came down from Milan to Lyon. That was how he badly wanted that deal to happen. Would that actually add to any good credits along in bringing the money down?
He's got a good relationship with Lyon, a very good relationship, and he's appreciated by Aulas as well. And Aulas, for all the tough guy that he is actually very respectful of his players. And if a player says, I want to go, he'll shake his hand and he'll do it. He'll still ask for the amount of money. They won't keep him if the money comes, but if that money doesn't come in, they're not going to let him go for cheaper. And like I said, Paqueta is not the guy who's going to say, I'm not playing if you don't sell me, or who's going to purposely be shit so that he can go somewhere else. He's going to still be awesome and show how good he is. And like I said, the preseason game is shown how great it could be. And the Lyon fans who 2 months ago were like, yeah, you gotta go. Now they're like, oh, wait, he's actually a very skilled player. We don't know if we want him to go. So he's got a serious fan backing too. If he leaves, people will be sad in Lyon.
So I just wanted to ask about go back to what I was talking about earlier with Hosam Awa. There's so many like different like factors of it seems to like stop him from getting his move a couple summers ago to Arsenal, and then his value just keeps decreasing, and no one seems to be biting until now. Betis is now. It reminds me of Nabil Fekir because he was heavily linked to Arsenal and then never got his move, and then went to Betis for a pretty low price. So I'm curious about like what information you have or what you know about like everything with that situation, and why aren't teams biting? Like what has happened to him? Did his form drop off? Is he like a character concern? There's been rumors about like his brother wanting like a huge agent fee a couple of years ago, which really stopped his move to Arsenal. So like, do you know any information regarding that?
Yeah, I think there was definitely both an overhyping after that the final 8, the Champions League during COVID, where it was so great against Juventus and then against Manchester City, and the fact that Bob mentioned earlier, Jean-Michel Aulas is a very difficult president to deal with. So out of that final 8, he said Awar is, I think it was 40 million that he was asked for, but he's not worth that. He was a young player who had his first dent into European football and his first sort of like successful spell in European football. And after that, unfortunately for him, he didn't confirm. He had this summer, that summer where supposedly everybody wanted him, where I think Pep Guardiola said Houssem Aouar is one of the best players I've ever played against or something like this. And in France, the word is that kind of got to his head. He asked Lyon to leave. So he wanted to go to Arsenal at the time. That didn't happen. He kind of like took offense to it, sort of told, the word is he said that, it wasn't fair that everybody else, the Ben Arfa, the Benzema, the Fekir, once they had done enough for the club, they were allowed to go. And he was put a price that was more than what he was actually worth on his head. And so that means he couldn't go because of that. So apparently he wasn't happy, and he said it wasn't fair the way he was treated. And then when he came back, instead of being amazing and forcing clubs to come and put the money, he just wasn't the same anymore. He just wasn't as good anymore. And, we're not in the locker room, but there was rumors that he just was working a little bit less hard at training, that he didn't like the new coach, and then he liked the next new coach, and that nobody could sort of find his position anymore because his position was taken by Memphis Depay, and then his position was taken by Lucas Paqueta, and that if you don't put him into that 8 role in a system when there's 1 6 and 2 8s, then he can't perform. And so Lyon stopped playing like this, and that was a big issue for him again, supposedly he couldn't adapt to anything. He had some moments where we could see his talent back, but we could clearly see a lack of investment, a lack of effort during the games, playing with the ball, but not defending enough necessarily, and really not being an asset to Lyon for the past 2 years. So that's also why his value completely dropped. What's happening right now is very interesting because Betis Sevilla want him. Supposedly, I've made the offer. Lyon said yes, but Aouar pushes to go to Premier League. He doesn't want to go to Liga. He doesn't want to go to Serie A. He want to go to Premier League. If with my eyes of football amateur, Premier League is not for Aouar. It's too physical for him. It's too fast for him. I don't see him succeeding in there unless there's an epiphany and he becomes an amazing player and he developed really well. But if you were selling for Arsenal now, you would lose at least half a season getting him used to what the Premier League level is and the rhythm is. If he goes to Serie A or Liga, he's an immediate starter because he's not going to have these issues of intensity and the rhythm, etc. So I think if I'm honest, if he doesn't go to Arsenal, you guys dodge a bullet.
Yeah, probably we were ruining that a couple of seasons ago, as what Mitch mentioned, but not anymore. When we've got, if at all we are going to be taking any other player apart from Paqueta from Lyon, I would be looking at Kakare. That's possibly the next big one, I would say, would be coming out from the Lyon, the famous Lyon conveyor belt. But having said that, one final thought in terms of Paqueta back again, how could it be Lacazette's influence now that he's gone back to Lyon? They've played a couple of preseason games, as you mentioned. The bad thing, when you look at from the Arsenal transfer side of things, is every player that we are linked with will be performing outstandingly well in all their internationals and all in their friendly matches and all those sort of things, which will sort of make their value go up further. But then as well, on the other hand, the players that we want to send out, they will be sort of injured or not playing, or they won't be putting up their best display, which makes our job difficult as well to, ship them out. So it sort of happens every year at Arsenal. But how big would be Lacazette's influence now that he's gone back there? He's a big figure there at Lyon. He's of course, he's got his boyhood club there. And if you were to give a brief idea in terms of what his wages are, I know it's not a big thing in Ligue 1, but I think in Premier League, everyone would be tagged along with the value and all those sort of things in terms of how much they earn, how much is the transfer value and all those sort of things. So if we were to give up those, what would be that?
I can't remember how much he's paid, but it was released back in May, because every year in May, all the salaries are being released. I think it was at 50,000, £2.5 million a year is his salary. So that's 50 a week, I think. 50 2 weeks. So £50,000 a week is roughly his salary. As far as Lacazette and even Tolisso coming back, the issue I think for Arsenal is if Paqueta kind of finds the love back, Lyon is 100% right now said to be the one team that can challenge Paris Saint-Germain in Ligue 1. So with the year that we are in, with the World Cup in a few months, if Paqueta stays in Lyon, from where we see it, he's got more chance of going into the World Cup than if he changes club, because you change club, you have to adapt. You have to, fight for your spot, and then you can play. So there's one thing that we're all a bit surprised in France, that Paqueta kind of wants to leave, because if he stays in Lyon in that team, he'll play because there's nobody who can play his position. And with Lacazette, Tolisso, Kakere, he's kind of a natural fit because he brings something that nobody else can bring in there. So with Lacazette coming, from what I saw it, to me, even though they kept saying that they would sell Paqueta, it was a good way to convince Paqueta that staying at Lyon is not a bad thing, because all of a sudden you're going to fight for the title and not struggle in 10th place like they did all season last season. But yeah, that said, he might still want to go because he lost a bit of his love. But to me, when Lacazette joined, it was a good way also to convince Paqueta that maybe he shouldn't go somewhere else.
All right. Okay. I think I've asked you enough. I feel covered every bit of the Paqueta. I mean, we'll have more to come. If in case we manage to sign him. I think the priorities is not him at the moment, but yeah, we'll see how the transfer season goes through. Mitch, if you don't have any further questions, then we can end it along with here.
Yeah, I feel like I have a way better grasp on the player, so I appreciate you coming on and giving us all this great information. I think it's gonna be really helpful for Arsenal fans because I think a lot of people on Twitter like to pretend that they've seen every single player in the world, but sometimes that is just not true. So it's really nice to have someone come on who knows the player, knows the league, and is able to give us this kind of information. So really appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys having me.
Thank you. Pleasure is ours. Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you.